frequently more and more people will tune in and maybe participate through the comments. And we are live on YouTube and Facebook again, by the way. So if you're catching this later on and you'd like to join us, we don't have a set time for these podcasts yet, but I think we will find one. I think it'll be more regular after the holiday season because it's getting a little crazy these days. But anyways, let's start the conversation with this post that you share with us, Asphyxia, about the censorship happening on our libertarian and the. I don't like one of the things that drove you to start the Novusphere forum was the censorship that happened on r slash Bitcoin. And so can you give me a little bit of context on that and how does this relate to what we're currently doing and why do you think that's necessary?
Yes, so first I'll provide context to the thing that's going on r slash
Mm-hmm.
libertarian. Now, as a disclaimer, I don't exactly follow that sub, but
Mm-hmm.
from what I can gather from it, the biggest problem has been there has some new moderators appointed communism should be.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when other views are being censored because what it forces is for the part of the community that is being censored to have to go off and create their own community on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is obviously the new community, you have to convince people to move over from the old community. And there's going to be a lack of content in the new community. So, same place on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't really have to go and build a community from ground up. You don't have the same content loss you do when you try to do something like this on Reddit.
Right, right. But I think one of the big challenges also is like is I think it's kind of hard for people to wrap the idea around that the content's gonna be same on all these different domains because they're drawing from the same database, which or the source information, which is the blockchain. So yeah, what's your view on that? Like, do you think this is something people just kind of have to eventually learn to understand, or should we implement some kind of feature that help clarify that?
I think in terms of end user experience, the ultimate goal of
One of the things we're doing is we're taking percentage from the tip, and also once we have the ad space up, people could pay for that ad space. That'd just be like more incentives for them to host their own side state, and that I think leaving the job of serving users and providing experience of users to that category and with that financial incentive, I think will be helpful in terms of decentralization.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, cool. Do you have anything else to add to this story about the all libertarian stuff?
Not really. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said before, I just see it very similar as to what happened with r slash Bitcoin and r slash BTC, and there's no doubt that it'll happen to other communities in the future. And so
Mm-hmm.
finding a way to prevent this need to fragment communities anytime there's disagreement in terms of leadership and moderation, I feel is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to add to that, I think I told you in chat that one of my friends actually got banned briefly from the EOS Telegram, because he got into an argument with the admin, and he was like, "Who is this admin? Like he doesn't show up at any of the projects. Uh, he, as far as I know, he is not really involved that deeply with the either Block That One or any of the block producers. I think he's just again is just someone who happened to start the channel and therefore gain like the almost full control over how the conversation is perceived and the narrative of the project. So yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty problematic, especially when you have unappointed leaders.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so have you seen the videos I upload lately?
Yeah, the last two videos that
Yeah, so
you've uploaded, I think one of them was. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just wondering which topics do you find interesting? Speaking of which, I would just like to say I have an interesting topic, which is the vote buying things that are happening on EOS. Like I did a video pointing out how EOS Stack is kind of, I wouldn't say they're vote buying because, again, the token holders are part of the company and therefore they are entitled to the block producer reward. But that incentivizes them to vote for EOS stack. So one of the very these within the small EOS community popular YouTubers, Crypto Tim, did got very angry. It's like, oh, why are you calling out EOS stack? Like you're laying false accusations, blah blah blah. So what's your take on that? Like, what EOS stack doing vote buying? Is Shintai what Shintai is doing vote buying, and you know people will say that obviously Start EOS also vote buying. Like, what's your stand and what's your opinion on that?
So I think this scenario boils down to it's very similar to a case of, and I'm not calling them, this name I'm going to use, but I think it's very similar to the case of benevolent dictators. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, if you have a benevolent dictator and this benevolent dictator's nation is very prosperous,
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that he's a dictator inherently evil? Because, we often associate being a dictator with being evil, corrupt,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people might say, no, he's doing so much good for his country, he's doing so much good for his people. And then others might say, well, he's robbing them of freedom and liberty and all that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
just because, they're not abusing their position of power doesn't necessarily mean they're not breaking or arbitrarily bending the rules into great territory. I think if there was further clarification on whether EOS stack, what they are doing is considered vote buying or not, we'd see a lot of other BPs sort of just adopt this model because, hey, at the end of the day, it's a way to just get free votes, right? You just
Mm-hmm.
issue your own token and you say, we're a decentralized company, quote, quote, and,
Mm-hmm.
by holding our token of our rewards. And I mean, if you think about it, from what I recall, Start EOS wasn't really telling people to vote for them per se. They
Mm-hmm.
were telling people just to set them as a proxy.
Right.
And
Right.
likewise with Chintai,
Mm-hmm.
um, you are setting, you're giving your EOS over to Chintai, and they become the new custodian of your EOS for using their service, and then they're going and voting with your EOS. So
Mm-hmm.
if exchanges who are also custodians were voting with your EOS, but they were again being benevolent dictators in terms of who they voted for,
Mm-hmm.
would people really be complaining as much about uh, who exchanges are voting for? And I think that's up for debate, but I feel like some of the exchanges are voting for lackluster candidates, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's what causes the community backlash.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. Like, I think there also needs to be clarification on Article 4, which is the article on vote buying, because again, like, under that current definition, like the exchanges, the if they have their own block producer, the exchanges, the Shintai, EOS Stack, and Star EOS, I think all those would fall under the vote buying category. Like, I think that's one of the difficulty of having governance on blockchain because again, it's like it's very much financially driven, and almost aspects of it some kind of financial element to it. So it's really difficult to detail.
We see the referendum system come into play, and we see all the Constitution parts put to referendum and get voted in. And as
Mm-hmm.
for how long that could take, I'm honestly, not sure how long that's going to take. The referendum system has taken, I guess EOS has been out for around 6 months now, or 5 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's been in the works since pretty much the start of EOS, and it's hard to say how long it will take for the referendum stuff to get voted in, implemented, and all of. Sorry, not the referendum, the Constitution to get voted in and discussed before BPs really have a consensus on it.
Have you taken a look at any of the constitution drafts, by the way? Because there's been quite a few floating around.
I think I've seen a few of them in like
Mm-hmm.
maybe the earlier days of Yoast, like within the first couple, like first or second month, like when the mainnet launched. But
Mm-hmm.
since then, I haven't really looked at any of the drafts that have come out since then.
Okay. What's your current take on the constitution, like the one we have in place? Like, do you think it's? I don't know. When I first saw it, I had a very immediate reaction in that it was a really poorly written legal document. You know, I'm not a lawyer by training. Just want to put that out. But like the first article is like no lying. Like how are you gonna enforce that? Like, and what's the threshold? Like,
Optimistic about what the outcome will be after we've gone through the whole referendum process. But for the time being, until we go through that process, I don't really expect a lot good to come out of anything that needs the Constitution as a means of arbitrating.
right, right. I guess like one of the things that I worry is that the referendum system will actually it's not a it's not a binding system in that it's just like only after the results are in it's up to the bloc to just implement it. But one of the concerns I have is the voter turnout for the referendum. Like there is a deep disconnect between not just the East and the West community, but the EOS community as a whole. Like a lot of people who hold tokens don't know what's going on. And when someone puts forward a referendum, only the people who are paying attention will vote, and those people are gonna have like a disproportionate amount of influence or effect on the blockchain on the how the blockchain is gonna work. I don't know. Like, do you think this is something to be concerned?
Um, so I think this is okay. So first, I'll address the problem between the disconnect between the East and the West. I believe there is a Telegram group. I can give you the link to it after the call. That really has to do with referendum writing for when you want to put forward a proposal. And there's been some discussions about how to handle it because obviously, if the base proposal is, let's say, in English, there needs to be some translation provided in Chinese or whatever other languages, so other communities are able to make informed decisions about how they feel about this particular referendum proposal. So we can't have them just be in one language.
Right,
Now,
right.
in regards to what you said about voter turnout, I believe this is very similar to um, people who vote in their jurisdictions. So, in most countries, everyone over the age of 18 has the right to vote. Maybe it varies slightly country to country. Um, but, you can choose to be agnostic to, the whole political process and not vote at all.
Right.
And that's your right to exercise. And if you don't have an interest in politics, okay, that's fine. So, I think the same thing applies here, which is as an EOS holder, you have a vested interest to vote and participate in this process and get the best outcome for the EOS blockchain because, well, again, you have a vested interest. But there are going to be people that are lazy about this and they just want to be along for the ride as a speculative investment, and that's fine. But they can't complain when a referendum goes the way that they disagree with, especially if they didn't vote on that referendum.
Right, right. No, and I agree, but I just like, but the blockchain voting is so different from like a political system in the physical world, just because, like in the physical world, you will at least walk around and see like political ads, whereas I argue online on an EOS network is really hard to get, like if you're not paying attention, if you're not in the telegrams, if you're not like on Reddit keeping up to date, it's really hard to get like a sense of what exactly is going on and when a vote is going. Just because again, like the community is spread all over the world in different time zones, speaks different languages. That's just something I personally worry about.
I think if there's an important enough referendum that's going on, you're going to see it being discussed and promoted in a lot of different places, right? So you're going to see it promoted on Reddit, on Twitter, on Telegram, and you'll see it all over the place. And the referendum voting process isn't going to be like an overnight thing. These votes do have a minimum amount of EOS that needs to actually vote for a referendum to be considered valid, and it does actually have a minimum amount of how much needs to be in favor of yes than in favor of no for them to pass. So there is a lot of incentive for either party to promote the referendum to ensure that as many people as possible come out.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry, did I cut out?
Oh, yeah, you cut out a little bit.
Okay, where did I cut out at?
Making sure that there's more people coming, enough people coming out to vote for the referendum to pass. Like there's a threshold.
Yeah, so there's a threshold of how much people or how much EOS needs to vote for a referendum. I don't remember the exact numbers, and there's a set amount of how much needs to be in favor of yes as opposed to in favor of no.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, that does introduce an element of strategic voting. But those that are in favor of yes in terms of actually passing this referendum are going to be promoting it on several
Mm-hmm.
platforms and trying to get the word out there. So as long as you're somewhat involved in the EOS community, you're not just holding this token on an exchange and you don't follow any of the news whatsoever, then you'll
Mm-hmm.
probably find out about the stuff that's going on. So as long as you're active on some form of social media.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, okay. So moving on to another topic I want to talk about is Rex. Actually, a lot of people are very excited about Rex. Have you heard about it? And what's your thinking on it?
Yeah, so I think Rex is um, going to be very positive for the EOS community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think this might have more to do with the psychological effect of Rex than it does, if anything else, because so a lot of people don't realize as it is that EOS is actually deflationary, and because a lot of the optional fees in EOS that come from RAM trading, premium
Mm-hmm.
names, and that sort of thing are going to the EOS savings account, and this is essentially counted as burned EOS.